Today I'm going to tell you the story of a Confederate widow who had to travel with a Union captain. Catherine Beaumont was forced to rely on Captain Hayes to reach Richmond and see her dying father. But what happened next left everyone in shock. Please subscribe to our channel and comment where you're listening to this story from. The soldiers arrived at dusk. Catherine Beaumont watched from her porch as blue-coated men poured onto her lap, trampling the summer corn that had survived 3 years of war. Her fingers tightened around the porch railing, knuckles against peeling paint. Mrs. Beaumont, a tall officer, his northern accent grated on. Captain Michael Hayes, Union Army. Catherine straightened her spine, the black morning dress hanging loose her frame. You're trespassing on private property, Captain. I have orders to establish camp here for 3 days. He extended a paper which refused to take. We'll compensate you for any damages. Union dollars? She laughed bitterly. Worthless, the captain's expression. May we speak inside? Say what you must, and then remove your men from my land. The darkening storms come. My men need shelter. We'll use your barn and fields only, not the house. Thunder rumbled in the distance, as if summoned by his words. Catherine felt trapped between fury and practicality. Refusing might only make things worse. 3 days, she conceded coldly. Touch nothing in the house. As Hayes turned to leave, Catherine called after him. Captain, tell your men the orchard is off limits. My husband is buried there. Something like sympathy flickered across his face. Of course, Mrs. Beaumont. You have my word. Later, from her bedroom window, Catherine watched soldiers erecting tents in her east field. Rain began to fall, pattering against glass that hadn't been washed since her husband died at Antietam nearly 2 years ago. The letter from Richmond lay open on her bedside table. Her father was dying. The journey would be dangerous, roads filled with deserters, bridges destroyed, territories changing hands daily, but she had to try. A knock at the front door interrupted her thoughts. Grabbing a shawl, Catherine descended the stairs to find Captain Hayes on her porch, rain dripping from his uniform. Forgive the intrusion. One of my men found this trying to deliver it. He handed her a telegram. Catherine broke the seal, reading quickly. Her father had taken a turn for the worse. The doctor gave him days, not weeks. Bad news? Hayes asked, noticing. My father is dying in Richmond, she replied distantly, forgetting momentarily that she was speaking to the enemy. I need to leave tomorrow. Impossible, Hayes. The roads to Richmond are unsafe. Fighting near Cold Harbor has blocked the direct route. I'm aware of the risk. His voice was ice. But I must go. The captain studied her with unexpected intensity. You wouldn't make it 10 miles alone? Catherine raised her chin. I've survived 3 years of war, Captain Hayes. I'll manage. I'm heading to Richmond myself in 2 days, he said unexpectedly. Military business? You'll ride with me. Shock rendered her momentarily speechless. With a Union officer? Into the Confederate capital? I'll be in civilian clothes. You'll have protection, and I'll have the perfect cover. Escorting a grieving daughter to her father's bedside. His practical tone couldn't mask the impropriety of his suggestion. Absolutely not, Mrs. Hayes said quietly. This may be your only chance to see your father alive. The brutal truth of his words struck her. Catherine turned away, staring into the rain-soaked darkness beyond her porch. I'll consider it, she said finally. Good night, Captain. Sleep eluded Catherine that night. Thunder shook the house. She weighed her option. Trust a Union officer, an enemy, or risk the journey alone? By dawn, necessity had overcome pride. She found Hayes inspecting his troops near the barn. I accept your offer, Count Preamble. On one condition, we travel as distant cousins, nothing more. Hayes nodded. We leave at first light tomorrow. Pack lightly, 1 small bag only. I know how to travel in wartime, Captain replied sharply. His eyes met hers directly. I'm sure you do, Mrs. Beaumont, but this journey will be more dangerous than you imagine. As Catherine turned to leave, Hayes added, There's something else you should know. I wasn't entirely forthcoming about my purpose in Richmond, and stopped. I assumed as this isn't just a military mission. It's personal. Your late husband's name was Colonel William Beaumont of the 18th Virginia, correct? She nodded suddenly. I need to understand his connection to a matter I'm investigating. In return for safe passage, I'll need your cooperation. My husband was a hero, perhaps, but every man casts a shadow, Mrs. Beaumont, even heroes. Catherine felt a chill, despite the summer heat. What exactly are you suggesting? That's what we'll discover in Richmond, he answered. Be ready at dawn. As Catherine walked back to the house, unease settled in her stomach. What did this Union captain know, or think he knew, about William, and what would she discover on the road to Richmond? The road to Richmond. Dawn painted the sky pink as Catherine secured a small bag to the wagon. She wore her simplest gray cotton that wouldn't mark her immediately as Confederate gentry. Captain Hayes approached in civilian clothes, the blue uniform replaced by a worn brown coat and slouch hat that effectively disguised his military bearing. "Ready, Mrs. Beaumont?" His voice was low. "As I'll ever be," she replied, accepting his hand reluctantly as he helped her onto the wagon seat. Hayes spoke briefly to his lieutenant, then joined her. With a flick of the reins, they left Willow Creek Plantation behind. Catherine didn't look back at the soldiers occupying her home. She'd survived worse loss. They traveled in silence for the first hour, following back roads Hayes claimed would be safer than the main thoroughfare. The morning warmed quickly, promising another sweltering July day. "How did your husband die?" Hayes asked suddenly. Catherine stiffened. "Antietam. Leading a charge against your forces," nodded. "I was there." "Were you?" Her voice sharpened. "Perhaps you shot him." "I was a lieutenant then. Different regiment." His eyes remained on the... "I lost friends that day. Here you are. As would your husband. Tell me about his work before the fighting at Sharpsburg." "Why do humor me?" "He commanded the 18th Virginia. Before that, he was stationed in Richmond." She hesitated. "William rarely discussed military matters with me. Did he mention Chimborazo Hospital or a Dr. Everett?" Catherine's hand tightened on her reticule. "No." "Should he have?" Hayes shrugged. "Just names in a report." They crested a hill, revealing a countryside seemingly untouched by war, golden fields ripening under summer sun. The peaceful scene ended abruptly as they turned a bend. A farmhouse stood in charred ruins, fields trampled and barren. "Sherman's work?" Catherine asked bitterly. "This far east?" "No." Hayes slowed the wagon. "Deserters, most likely. They're becoming as dangerous as any army." As if summoned by his words, 3 ragged men emerged from the tree line, blocking. Their filthy uniforms, 2 gray, 1 blue, told their deserters indeed. "What have we here?" The tallest man grinned, revealing missing. "Why, fine lady and her gentleman friend." Hayes kept one hand on the reins, the other moving subtly toward his coat, where Catherine suspected a pistol. "We're traveling to see the lady's dying father. Let us pass." "Tax for using this road," another man said, stepping closer. "Whatever valuables you got." "We have nothing worth taking." The first man's eyes narrowed. "That ring looks valuable enough." Catherine's hand covered her wedding band instinctively. "That's enough," Hayes said, his voice taking on a hard edge Catherine hadn't heard before. "Step aside." The deserters exchanged glances, measuring Hayes's calm confidence against their own desperation. Something in his posture made them hesitate. "3 against 1, mister," the blue-coated deserter warned. "True, but I promise the first man who moves dies." He revealed the pistol now, aimed steadily. "The choice is yours." A tense silence followed. Then the tall deserter spat and stepped back. "Plenty other travelers on this road. Less trouble than you." Hayes kept the pistol visible as they drove past. Catherine released the breath she'd been holding only when the men disappeared from view. "You've done that before," she observed. "War teaches useful skills," Hayes replied, tucking the weapon away, "including when not to fight." He glanced at her. "You remained admirably calm." "This isn't my first encounter with desperate men." Catherine smoothed her skirt. "After Fredericksburg, stragglers from both armies came through. A woman alone learns to be resourceful." Something like respect flickered in Hayes's expression. "Your husband's been dead 2 years. Why stay alone on that plantation? You have no children." "It's my home," Catherine said simply. "What would you have me do? Flee north? Many Southern women have." "I'm not many women." Hayes smiled slightly. "I'm beginning to understand that." Facebill. They stopped at midday beside a creek. While Hayes tended the horses, Catherine retrieved bread and dried apple slices from her provisions. "You still haven't told me why you're investigating my husband," offering him food. Hayes accepted. "Did William ever mention encoded dispatch or missing Confederate funds?" "What are you implying?" "Nothing yet. I'm gathering information." Hayes met her gaze directly. "Before your husband died, significant Confederate gold disappeared from Richmond. The last person to authorize its movement was Colonel William Beaumont." "That's absurd. William was a patriot." "Patriots can be tempted too." Hayes's voice softened, "especially when they believe their cause is failing." Catherine stood abruptly. "We should continue if we want to reach the Taylor farm by nightfall." Hayes nodded. As they returned to the wagon, Catherine felt the weight of his unspoken accusation. Had she truly known her husband? The question lingered as they continued eastward toward whatever truth awaited in Richmond, secret and shelter. The Taylor farm appeared as dusk settled, a modest homestead nestled in a grove of oak trees. Smoke curled from the chimney, a promising sign of hospitality uncertain. "Friends of yours?" Catherine asked, as Hayes guided the wagon toward the house. "Friends of friend. The Taylors help travelers from both sides. They've lost 2 sons to this war, one at Bull Run, wearing gray, another at Gettysburg in blue." An older woman emerged from the house, wiping her hands on her apron. Her weathered face remained neutral, until Hayes spoke a phrase Catherine didn't understand. The woman's posture relaxed, marginally. "Martha Taylor," she introduced. "You can stable your horse out. Supper's nearly ready." The farmhouse interior was humble but clean. A teenage girl stirred a pot of stew, while an older man sat mending a harness by the fire. They acknowledged the visitors with cautious nods. "We don't ask questions," Martha explained, setting out wooden bowls. "You'll sleep in the loft at first." During the simple meal, Catherine observed Hayes conversing quietly with Samuel Taylor. The farmer sketched something on the table with his finger, pointing eastward. Hayes nodded, expression. Later, alone in the loft, Catherine unpinned her hair, exhaustion settling into her bones. She froze at the sound of footsteps on the ladder. Hayes appeared, carrying a small lantern. "Forgive the intrusion," he said, remaining at a respectful distance. "Taylor reports Confederate pickets 2 miles east. We'll need to adjust our route tomorrow." Catherine nodded, then asked the question that had troubled her all day. "Why would my husband steal Confederate gold?" Hayes considered her. "I didn't say he stole it, only that he authorized before it vanished." He sat on it. "The official record shows Colonel Beaumont ordered the gold transferred to a secure location as Union forces approached. It never arrived." "And you think William took it?" "Someone did. $20,000 in gold doesn't simply disappear." Catherine twisted her wedding band. "If you're right, where would he have hidden it? And why not use it? We struggled after his death. I nearly lost the plantation twice." "That's what troubles me," Hayes admitted. "It doesn't make sense, unless he wasn't working alone." A chill ran through Catherine. "You think I was involved? Were you?" "No." The vehemence in her voice surprised even her. "I knew nothing of gold or encoded dispatch." Hayes studied her face in the lamplight. "I believe." "Which means the answers lie in Richmond." Rain began pattering against them. Catherine pulled her. "Tell me honestly, what happens when we reach Richmond? Will you arrest those you suspect? My mission is to recover the gold if possible. Understand what happened if not." His eyes met hers. "Union forces will take Richmond eventually. When that happens, anyone connected to this affair will face military justice, including my father. Is that why you agreed to escort me, because he's implicated?" Hayes's silence was answer enough. "My father is dying. Whatever you suspect him of, surely it's punishment enough." "Perhaps." Hayes stood to leave. "Rest now. Tomorrow will be difficult." Catherine barely slept, her mind filled with troubling questions. Had her father and husband conspired together? Was William's patriotism a facade? The man she'd mourned for 2 years was becoming a... Before dawn, Martha Taylor provided fresh bread and information. Union cavalry had been spotted nearby. Their window for safe passage was narrowing. They departed in misty rain, taking a narrow track through dense woods that Samuel Taylor had recommended. The wagon struggled on the muddy path, forcing them to proceed slowly. "If the gold was taken," Catherine said, silence, "why would William leave me to struggle? He loved me." Men compartmentalized. "Perhaps he meant to return for you, but died before he could. Or perhaps he's innocent of your accusation." Hayes glanced at, "For your sake, I hope so." Midday brought clearing sky and a new obstacle. Ahead, a wooden bridge spanning a swollen creek had partially collapsed. Hayes examined it critically. "We can't cross here. The nearest alternate bridge is miles south. What do we do?" Hayes pointed to smoke rising above distant trees. "That's the Harrison estate. I know the family. Confederate sympathize, but reasonable people." "You know Confederate sympathizers?" Catherine, skeptic. "This war hasn't erased all prior connections. Charles Harrison and I attended West Point. He resigned his commission to fight for Virginia, but we've maintained a certain professional courtesy." "You trust him not to shoot you on sight?" "I trust him to respect the white flag. We'll approach under." Hayes turned the wagon toward the smoke. "And to honor the gentleman's agreement we made when we last met." An hour later, they approached an imposing plantation. 2 armed men intercepted them before they reached the main drive. Hayes raised a white handkerchief. "I'm here to see Major Harrison," he called. "Tell him Michael Hayes requests shelter." "L'agneau." After a tense wait, they were escorted to the house. Charles Harrison, a tall man with a graying beard and an arm in a sling, greeted them on the veranda. "Hayes," he said without warmth, "bold of you to come here. Necessity makes for strange journeys. May I introduce Mrs. Beaumont? We seek temporary shelter and safe passage information." Harrison's eyes narrowed at Catherine's name. "Beaumont? Colonel William Beaumont's widow?" Catherine nodded, surprised by the recognition. "Then you'd better come inside, Harrison. There are matters we should discuss privately." As they followed him into the house, Catherine caught Hayes's eye. His expression confirmed her suspicion. Harrison knew something about William, something important enough to grant enemies shelter in dangerous time. The truth in Richmond. The Harrison Estate Library felt like a sanctuary from war, with leather-bound books lining walnut shelves. Charles Harrison poured brandy for himself and Hayes, offering tea to Catherine. "Colonel Beaumont," Harrison said, settling into a chair, a complicated man. "You knew my husband? We served together briefly in '62. Harrison glanced at Hayes. "Your Union captain hasn't been entirely honest about his interest in Will." Hayes remained impassive. "Perhaps you should illuminate us both." Harrison sipped his brandy. "The missing gold was never stolen. It was diverted on orders from Richmond itself." Catherine set down her teacup. "What orders?" "A desperate gamble," Harrison continued. 20,000 in gold sent to Europe to purchase blockade run. Your husband was the courier assigned to ensure it reached a British ship waiting in Wilmington." "That's not the official record," Hayes interjected. "Of course not," Harrison held thinly. "The official record was altered when the plan failed." "Failed how?" "Union naval presence increased unexpectedly. The British ship couldn't approach. William had to return with the gold." Harrison, "But he never reached Richmond, did he, Captain?" Hayes's jaw tightened. "My information suggests the gold disappeared near Culpeper, and William died at Antietam shortly after." Harrison, "Convenient timing for someone?" Catherine felt dizzy with the revelation. "Are you suggesting William was killed for the gold?" "I'm suggesting," Harrison said carefully, "that your husband's death at Antietam might not have been the random violence of battle." Silence fell heavy in the room. Catherine studied Hayes, whose expression had grown unreadable. "You knew this," she accused. "This isn't about recovering Confederate gold. It's about William's murder." Hayes set down his... "Not exactly. I believe your husband hid the gold before Antietam, intending to retrieve it later. Someone in Richmond who knew about the mission might have that gold now." "My father?" Catherine whispered. "Your father was Treasury Secretary Belmont's assistant. He would have known about the mission." Catherine stood abruptly. "We need to reach Richmond now." Harrison raised his hand. "Not possible. Union patrols are sweeping the eastern road. You'll leave at dawn. I'll provide an escort to the Confederate lines." That night, Catherine found Hayes on the veranda, staring in. "Were you sent to investigate William's death or find the gold?" "Both," Hayes admitted. "Union intelligence intercepted Confederate messages about the missing shipment months ago. When I discovered you were Colonel Beaumont's widow, it seemed providential. You used me. I offered safe passage to a destination. Our motivation..." "Did they? My father may be implicated in husband's death, and you knew it all along. I know your father has been corresponding with a British banker in Richmond. Large sums have been transferred to an account in London." Crumbling. Could he? War curse even good men. "Your father may have seen opportunity in tragedy. What happens when we reach Richmond? I speak with your father. You say your goodbyes, then you decide." "Decide what?" "Whether to return to your plantation under Union protection or face questioning about your family's involvement." His eyes held her. "I believe you're innocent, Catherine. I'll testify." His use of her given name startled her. "Why would you help me?" "Because this war has taken enough from all of us." Hayes stepped closer. "And because I've come to respect you." Dawn brought clear skies and Harrison's promised escort, 2 armed men who would accompany them to the Confederate picket line. They departed with minimal farewells. As Richmond's church spires appeared on the horizon, Catherine broke their long silence. "If my father confesses, what then?" "I report to my superiors. The information helps pressure the Confederacy's already strained finances." Hayes hesitated. "Catherine, regardless of what we discover, this war is ending. The South is losing." "I know," she said quietly. "I've known since Gettysburg." The Confederate checkpoint brought tense moments, but Catherine's status as Secretary Belmont's daughter-in-law granted them passage. They entered Richmond as afternoon shadows lengthened across cobblestone streets. The city was a shadow of its former glory. Food shortages and inflation had taken their toll on her capital. Haggard-faced citizens queued for bread, while wounded soldiers crowded high. Catherine's father's home on Clay Street stood eerily quiet. No servants greeted them. Inside, they found Secretary Beaumont himself sitting with Catherine's father, whose gaunt face brightened momentarily at her appearance. "Catherine, you came." She embraced him gently, feeling bones beneath his nightshirt. "Father." "Beaumont, you wear no uniform, but your bearing betrays you. State your business." "In Richmond. He escorted me safely." "Father, we need to speak about William, about the gold shipment." Her father's eyes darted to Beaumont, then back. "You know? Not everything, but enough." The dying man closed his eyes. William was patriotic to a fault. When the British ship couldn't dock, he refused to return the gold to Richmond. He coughed. He believed it would be seized for private use by officials planning to flee if Richmond fell. So he hid it at the plantation, her father, beneath the orchard, where he now lies, buried. Catherine gasped. "All this time? He wrote to me before Antietam, said if he fell, the gold should remain hidden until you could use it to rebuild after the war." Her father took her hand. "I've protected his secret, transferred funds to London to secure your future when the Confederacy falls." Beaumont stood abruptly. "This is treason." "No," her father replied. "It's a father's duty to his daughter." He turned to Hayes. "And now you know, Captain. What will you do with this information?" Hayes studied both men. "The war will end within months. The gold cannot change that outcome, but it could help rebuild what was destroyed." Something unspoken passed between Catherine and Hayes, an understanding born of shared hardship and reluctant respect. "I came seeking answers about a dead man," Hayes said. "I found them. What happens next is not for me to decide." As sunset painted Richmond's sky crimson, Catherine sat holding her father's hand while he slept. Hayes stood at the window, his silhouette outlined against the fading light. "You'll return to Union lines tomorrow?" He turned to "And you?" "I'll bury my father, then return to Willow Creek." She met his gaze steadily. "When the war ends, perhaps we'll meet again under different circumstances." Hayes nodded. "I'd like that." In that moment, surrounded by the ruins of one life and the uncertain promise of another, Catherine found an unexpected peace. The road from Willow Creek to Richmond had shown her truth, painful and liberating in equal measure. The gold beneath the orchard would wait, as would the future it might build. For now it was enough to have survived the journey, to have discovered that even enemies could find common ground on the long road to reconciliation. After the surrender, Willow Creek Plantation, Virginia, October 1860. Autumn painted the orchard in gold and crimson as Catherine knelt beside the simple. 6 months had since leased to Grant, and the long war finally ended. She placed fresh flowers on William's grave, then on the smaller marker beside it. Her father, laid to rest 3 days after their reunion in Richmond. The plantation had survived change. The main house remained, but Catherine had divided the farmland among 5 families, 3 former slaves who had chosen to stay after emancipation, and 2 white families displaced by war. They worked the land together now, an arrangement viewed with suspicion by neighboring planters clinging to old ways. Catherine stood brushing soil, no longer black mourning clothes, but a practical blue dress suited from this vantage point beneath she could see new roofs on the outbuilding, fresh white paint on the fence post, signs of healing in a wounded land. A rider appeared on the road, approaching steadily. Catherine shaded her eyes, recognizing the military posture even before she could make out the face. Her heart quickened despite her efforts to remain composed. Major Hayes now dismounted at the orchard gate. He wore a formal Union uniform, decoration ribbons on his chest catching the autumn sunlight. "Mrs. Beaumont," he said, removing his hat. "Major Hayes?" Catherine nodded, suddenly conscious of her work-worn hands and simple attire. "This is unexpected. I'm attached to the Reconstruction Authority in Richmond." His eyes held the same. "My duties include assessment of land redistribution, Catherine, and you've come to us." "Officially, yes. Unofficially, I wanted to see how we managed." Catherine gestured. "Would you like it's real? No chicory. A luxury." They walked in silence through rows of apple trees heavy with fruit. Near the house, children, black boy and white girl, building a precarious structure of sticks together. "You've created something remarkable here." "Necessity more than virtue, Catherine. None of us could survive alone." In the parlor, changed from its pre-war elegance to practical comfort, Catherine poured coffee. Hayes accepted the cup, then placed a document on the table between them. "Your land title," he explained, "officially recognized by the federal government. Your redistribution plan has been approved." Catherine touched the paper, relief washing through her. Thank you. Don't thank me. Your model is precisely what President Johnson claims to want. Southerners taking Reconstruction into their own hands. Hayes hesitated. Though between us, I believe your approach is too progressive for his taste. And for yours, Major? I've seen enough destruction. Expression. Creation seems the better path forward, however unconventional. Catherine studied him, noting new lines around his eyes, streak of gray at his temple that hadn't been there during their journey. You never reported the gold. It wasn't a question, but Hayes answered anyway. The war was ending. It seemed unnecessary, yet you knew exactly where it was buried. Beneath our feet, if your father spoke true. Hayes set down his cup. Have you used it? Catherine nodded toward the window, where new buildings stood in the distance. Wells for clean water, materials for homes. A proper schoolhouse being built beyond that rise. She met his eyes directly. William wanted it to rebuild. I'm honoring that. Hayes smiled, the expression transforming his face. I believe he would approve. And what of you, Major? Does the righteous Union officer approve of Confederate gold being used this way? The Union officer completed his duty when the war ended. Hayes leaned forward slightly. The man sitting before you now admires your courage. The use of her given name hung in the air between them, a bridge across divisions that had once seemed insurmountable. I received your letters, 3 of them. You never responded. I wasn't certain what to say. She looked down at her. Our connection was formed in war, through necessity and shared danger. I wasn't sure what remained in peace. Hayes, a fair uncertainty. I've asked for reassignment to Texas. So far? The words escaped before Catherine could contain them. Unless I have reason to stay. His gaze held steady. Do I? Catherine rose, moving to the window. Beyond the glass, the world was changing. Painfully, imperfectly, but changing nonetheless. She had survived the destruction of everything familiar, had built something new from the ashes. Perhaps personal reconstruction required similar. You once said we might meet again under different circumstances. These circumstances certainly different. Hayes stood, closing the distance between them with 2 steps. They are. We are no longer enemies. Were we ever truly enemies, Catherine asks, or simply people caught on opposite sides of history? A philosophical distinction, Hayes smiled, but an important one. He took her hand tentatively. I would like to stay in Virginia a while longer, if you permit it. Catherine looked at their joined hands, a Union officer and a Confederate widow, an impossible connection months earlier. I permit it, she said. The orchard will bear fruit for many. It would be a shame to miss it. Outside, autumn light gilded the landscape as children's laughter floated on the breeze. Beneath the orchard soil lay gold coins that had once represented Confederate dream. Now they would build a different future, one neither Catherine nor Hayes could have imagined when they first traveled the road to Richmond. The war had ended. Life, with all its complexity and possibility, continued.